I am continuing in my reading. What I'm doing in this series is to read through the entire standard works of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This consists of the Bible, the Book of Mormon, the Doctrine and Covenants, and the Pearl of Great Price. I am continuing reading in a chronological order, according to event, not according to publication or volume, so I'm skipping around a bit as I move along. Once again, reading in Hebrews. The epistle has been largely, almost exclusively, a treatise on Christ as the fulfillment of the Old Covenant and the establisher of the New Covenant. That he is the true high priest of the Melchizedek priesthood, the first to enter heaven, making it possible for all of us to join him there. And there's a lot of other details in there, but that's the basic message. And now we pick it up in chapter 11. This is the longest chapter in the Epistle to the Hebrews, so this will be a little bit longer of a video. In this video, we have a Joseph Smith translation. Now, what the Joseph Smith translation is, this is a translation or correction done by Joseph Smith to restore those passages that have been lost or corrupted over the years. Hebrews chapter 11. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. For by it the elders obtained a good report. Through faith we understand that the worlds were framed by the word of God, so that things which are seen were not made of things which do appear. By faith Abel offered unto God a more excellent sacrifice than Cain, by which he obtained witness that he was righteous, God testifying of his gifts, and by it he being dead yet speaketh. By faith Enoch was translated that he should not see death, and was not found because God had translated him. For before his translation he had this testimony, that he pleased God. But without faith it is impossible to please him, for he that cometh to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. By faith Noah, being warned of God of things not yet seen as yet, moved with fear, prepared an ark to the saving of his house, by the which he condemned the world, and became heir of the righteousness which is by faith. By faith Abraham, when he was called to go out into a place which he should after receive for an inheritance, obeyed, and he went out, not knowing whither he went. By faith he sojourned in the land of promise, as in a strange country, dwelling in tabernacles with Isaac and Jacob, the heirs with him of the same promise. For he looked for a city which hath foundations, whose builder and maker is God. Through faith also Sarah herself received strength to conceive seed, and was delivered of a child when she was past age, because she judged him faithful who had promised. Therefore sprang there even of one, and him as good as dead, so many as the stars of the sky in multitude, and as the sand which is by the seashore innumerable. These all died in faith, not having received the promises, but having seen them afar off, and were persuaded of them, and embraced them, and confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth. For they that say such things declare plainly that they seek a country, and truly, if they had been mindful of that country from whence they came out, they might have had opportunity to have returned. But now they desire a better country, that is, an heavenly. Wherefore God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he hath prepared for them a city. By faith Abraham, when he was tried, offered up Isaac, and he that had received the promises offered up his only begotten son, of whom it was said that in Isaac shall thy seed be called, accounting that God was able to raise him up even from the dead, from whence also he received him in a figure. By faith Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau concerning things to come. By faith Jacob, when he was a-dying, blessed both the sons of Joseph, and worshipped, leaning upon the top of his staff. By faith Joseph, when he died, made mention of the departing of the children of Israel, and gave commandment concerning his bones. Let us pause there a minute. We've gone through all these acts of faith from the book of Genesis, Adam down to Joseph. Of course, the first one that's directly mentioned by name is Abel, offered unto God a more excellent sacrifice. But notice there, and by it he being dead, yet speaketh. Joseph Smith said that this means that Abel had appeared as a resurrected person to Paul, or at least the author of Hebrews. In that case, Joseph Smith did refer to Paul as the author of Hebrews. So we have that. Enoch was translated. Noah built the ark. When it comes down here and says, these all died in faith, not having received the promises, but having seen them afar off, that's not referencing all the people who have been mentioned. That's referencing this section. So whenever you see that phrase, by faith, that means he's going on to another subject. And so whatever he says in there, generally speaking, is going to just apply to that section. And so you have by faith Abel, by faith Enoch, and then verse 7, by faith Noah, by faith Abraham, and then at 9, by faith he sojourns. Now we're starting another topic, but we don't get another by faith until we get down to verse 17. So from verse 9 to 16, that's all kind of one subject, one thing. So when he says, these all died in faith, not having received, but seen afar off, he's talking about those who have been mentioned in that section, which it would be Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, Jacob. But this is just a list, and no, none of this came from their own actions. None of it came because they made it happen. They believed in God, that He was able to make things happen. And so when He told them to do something, they did it with the faith that in so doing, God would make the end result what it needed to be. But let us continue, verse 23. By faith, Moses, when he was born, was hid 3 months of his parents, because they saw he was a proper child, and they were not afraid of the king's commandment. By faith, Moses, when he was come to years, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God than to enjoy the pleasures of sin for a season, esteeming the reproach of Christ greater riches than the treasures in Egypt, for he had respect unto the recompense of the reward. By faith he forsook Egypt, not fearing the wrath of the king, for he endured as seeing him who is invisible. Through faith he kept the Passover and the sprinkling of blood, lest he that destroyed the firstborn should touch them. By faith they passed through the Red Sea, as by dry land, which the Egyptians assaying to do were drowned. By faith the walls of Jericho fell down, after they were compassed about 7 days. By faith the harlot Rahab perished not with them that believed not, when she had received the spies with peace. And what shall I say more? For the time would fail me to tell of Gideon, and of Barak, and Samson, and of Jephthah, of David also, and Samuel, and of the prophets, who through faith subdued kingdoms, wrought righteousness, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions, quenched the violence of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, out of weakness were made strong, waxed valiant in fight, turned to flight the armies of the aliens. Women received their dead, raised to life again, and others were tortured, not accepting deliverance, that they might obtain a better resurrection. And others had trial of cruel mockings and scourgings, yea, moreover of bonds and imprisonment. They were stoned, they were sawn asunder, were tempted, were slain with the sword. They wandered about in sheepskins and goatskins, being destitute, afflicted, tormented, of whom the world was not worthy. They wandered in deserts, and in mountains, and in dens, and in caves of the earth. And these all, having obtained a good report through faith, received not the promise, God having provided some better thing for us, that they without us should not be made perfect. He lists all these acts of faith. And then he says, but I don't have time to list everything. Now this time, remember, he was speaking in the plurality before, now he's speaking in singular. I may say more, but time fails me. That's the thing. But a couple of chapters ago, it was we think this. We. So a little confusing there as to, is the author one person or is it many people? But these acts of faith, even enduring severe trials and persecutions, notice, stoned and sawn asunder. Sawn asunder, that's referring back to Isaiah, who was sawn asunder by the king. Slain with the sword. All these things, all these ways of being killed and being tortured and persecuted. Yet they did not give up. They kept their eye on the goal, and none of them saw the promise in their lifetime. They didn't even see the promise after they died, not until after Christ. They all went to the spirit world. None of them received the final promise of exaltation until after Christ was resurrected. They all looked forward to what they couldn't see, but knew or hoped was there. That's what faith is. As he defines faith in the beginning of the chapter. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. This is just listing all the examples of faith displayed in the Old Testament. One last note I do want to mention there is that in verse 26, talking about Moses esteeming the reproach of Christ greater riches than the treasures in Egypt. Again, just like saying Melchizedek knew Christ, Moses knew Christ. They understood that Christ was coming. They understood that the atonement, I don't know if they understood what the atonement was exactly, any better than we do, really. But they looked forward to Christ. They knew who he was. Now, this chapter does have a number of Joseph Smith translations. Quite a few of them, really. So let us take a look. In verse 1, instead of now faith is the substance of things hoped for, it is faith is the assurance of things that are hoped for. Makes much better sense. In verse 12, we skip down to verse 12, where it says, therefore spring there even of one, and him as good as dead, so many as the stars of the sky. We change the word so there, so him as good as dead, as many as the stars of the sky. Minor grammatical correction. In verse 21, it says, by faith Jacob, when he was a-dying, remove that a, we don't need that, that's completely unnecessary. And later on, leaning upon the top of his staff, possibly take leaning out. Remember, there are two different manuscripts for the Joseph Smith translation. One of them apparently removes the word leaning. Now in verse 23, where it says, because they saw he was a proper child. Correction. Because they saw that he was a peculiar child. Now peculiar doesn't mean odd. Peculiar means special. Reserved to a reserved thing. So a peculiar treasure is a treasure that is reserved to me. It is my special thing. And a peculiar child is one who is special in some way. In this context, special or reserved to God. They saw that even in his birth. In verse 24, so by faith Moses, when he was come to years, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter. We have the addition, when he was come to years of discretion, meaning he was old enough now, he chose, when he could be discerning, he chose to be referred to as an Israelite. In verse 32, where it says, and what shall I more say? We correct the grammar, and what shall I say more? But we also remove all the ofs in there. Tell of Gideon instead of and of Barak and of Samson. Just tell of Gideon and Barak and Samson, Jephthah and David also. So remove the ofs. In verse 35, instead of obtain a better resurrection, at the end there, it is might obtain the first resurrection. Not exactly a change in meaning, but very much a clarification of meaning. Now, the last two verses, verses 39 and 40, we're going to read together just in the Joseph Smith translation. There's a significant correction here. It now reads, and these all, having obtained a good report through faith, received the promises, God having provided some better things for them through their sufferings, for without sufferings they could not be made perfect. It is through suffering that we grow and progress. If we do not suffer, we remain stagnant. But the promises were made to them. The promise was made, but not realized until after the resurrection. I leave that here, and we will pick this up in chapter 12 next, so I will see you there.